Progress monitoring. In order to do progress monitoring, one of the very first things that you have to know is how to rank numbers from the lowest to highest. That's ranking, it's the middle ranking number. It can be an average, but it is not an average like the mean, the median, or the mode. It's more like the median. Okay, so how do I rank the numbers? First, I have to order them from the lowest to the highest. And if the number list has an odd number of numbers in it, then it's fine. Just put them in a list, either going up or down or side to side. First cross out the top one, then cross out the very bottom one, then cross out the second from the top one, then cross out the second one from the bottom, third one from the top, and then third one from the bottom until you get to that middle number. But you have to rank them first from the lowest to the highest. If the number is an even list of numbers, then you do exactly the same thing, but then you'll have two numbers left over in the middle because you're talking about even numbers. So therefore you have to average those two leftover numbers and take the average of that. That's why you see here in my example, the very first one is an odd number of numbers, 4, 6, 2, 7, 9. And so I first ranked them from lowest to highest. And the middle ranking number is 6. That's right smack in the middle. Then on the next one, you see I have an even set of numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers. 6 is an even number. I rank them from the lowest to the highest, and I find out that I have to average 45 and 50. Now, research is very much like what you're doing when you are doing progress monitoring. We do a lot of monitoring in research, and you've probably read articles in which there is a case study, for example, of one student and the different types of behaviors that are being shown based on an intervention that is given. Okay, it might be two people or three people all on one graph or on separate graphs. Okay, because each person is different in the actions and reactions to what is being tried. So if you take a look at research, a research article, you'll see that there are always two groups. There's a control group and an experimental group, or more than one experimental group. The control group is the traditional, usual way that something is done all the time. So for example, let's say I want to try out a new reading method. Okay, in the old method, which is Tom, Dick, and Jane, okay, Tom, Dick, and Jane, they have books, you read a story, you study the words, you answer some questions, you do a little bit of spelling, and then you'll have a review at the end of the week. Okay, and you do that all the time. You do that all the time. That's the control group. Okay, then the experimental group is when you try this new this series. However, what you're going to do is you're going to intersperse it with real modern day stories about and that involve mysteries. And then after they have finished a story, then everybody is going to get some positive reinforcement by getting the opportunity to do something of their own desire and take something out of the treasure chest or whatever. Okay, so I try this. First, the control group is the method that I've always been using. Nothing different. That's the way it is. Now, the experimental group is the new method that I'm going to be using. Okay, that we're going to try to see if the new method works better, the experimental method, which is the intervention. The control group is the baseline. That's the normal, that's the control. Now, how do I select my participants for the experimental and the control group? Well, this is how I do that. All those dots that you see in that rectangle are people. Okay, then what I do, that's called the population. That's the population. Then what I do is I uh, go around with a hat with all kinds of numbers in it, for example, and then the people take out a little piece of paper. If it has a number on it, or a sign on it, or a dot on it, those people belong to the experimental group. Those without a sign belong to the control group. Or certain numbers belong with the experimental group, and certain other numbers belong with the control group. As long as they don't know from each other or from the slip who it belongs to what group. That's one way of doing. That's called random sampling. Random sampling. So, how is that important? Well, it's pretty important because here you got a sample or a group of people who are participating and who are trying to do the experimental method, the new method. Now, if you take a look at progress monitoring, you're doing the same concept, exactly the same concept, except you're doing it with one person. You're doing it with one person, sometimes two. But we're just going to do it for one person. On this one slide, you see the two axes. Okay, you see the score, that's the y-axis, and the weeks, the week session. Okay, that's on the x-axis. You see my numbers here on the left side. That's the baseline. So remember, that's the control. That's the control. The old way of doing things. This is the way that we're doing it. We have to test it and see how well it's working. Okay, so that's what we do. Okay, and we see there B1, B2, B3. Baseline 1, baseline 2, baseline 3. Okay, so I plot the points. On B1, the very first week of baseline, you got two things correct. Baseline 2 got one thing correct, and baseline 3 got three things correct. Okay, we're not starting the intervention yet. That's all we're doing right now. We're doing the baseline. Okay, after we've got 3 points, that's all that we need. Just 3 points. We draw a dashed line to show that that's the end of the baseline. That's the end of the baseline. Okay, now if it was a group of people, then you would keep on going and you would see how the two of them match. Now we're going to do it in a slightly different way with only one person. Okay, but we're drawing that line. On the left side is the baseline, and then on the right side of that dashed line, that's the intervention. That's the intervention weeks, the number of weeks of intervention. The baseline is for 3 weeks, and then starting with number 4 to 14 or 12 or 10, whatever it might be, okay, that's when the intervention takes place. When you see this here, the baseline, you see the 3 parts, okay, B1, B2, and B3. And you see there the scores, 2 and a 1 and a 3. Okay, you see the dashed line there. Okay, so that's for 3 weeks. And notice that that dashed line is in between two numbers. It's in between two numbers. I always skip a space in between because it's not right on 3, because then you're going to run into problems with your dots and your actual scores. Okay. Now, look what I'm going to do with that baseline and what I want my student to be able to do by 14 weeks. By 14 weeks. That's called the aim line that we are going to draw now. The aim line. Take a look at the baseline and you take the middle ranking number. The middle ranking number for the baseline is 2. 1 is the lowest, then comes 2, and then comes 3. So 2 is the middle ranking number. You take that middle ranking number, okay, wherever it might be. Doesn't make any difference where it is. You draw a box around it, and you go to the goal of where you want the student to be by the end of the 14th week. By the end of the 14th week. Okay, you put a little circle there, and this one goes up to 19, I believe, or it might be 18. Okay, and then you connect the middle ranking number of the baseline with the final score. That is your aim line. That's the goal line. That's where we want our student to be. We want the student to progress that quickly. We want the student to progress that quickly to the end goal at the 14th week. Okay, now, is the student going to do that using an intervention? Using an intervention. On this slide, you see a number of different things. You see that aim line. That's there. That's just like it was on the other slide. Now, look what I did. I plotted the scores of the student for the week starting from week 4 to the week of week 12. Okay, now you see I connected the lines and you think, oh, well, it looks like it's going pretty well. Hasn't hit the aim line, so it's not progressing as well as it may be expected. So now I have to draw what's called a trend line. A trend line. It's just like fashion. What's the fashion? What's the goodness of fit line? What's the goodness of fit? That's the best way in statistics to actually put it. The goodness of fit test. Okay? So, how do we do that? How do we make that trend line? It's not difficult. What I did was I took the first 3 intervention scores and separated them from the baseline and from the other scores. That's that long line in section number 1 there. Section intervention section, it says on the left side. So I separate those 3 scores. Then I go to the last 3 scores, no matter where they are, the last 3 scores that I have, and I separate those from everything else. Notice I'm not taking the average. I'm not doing that. Okay, now, in that first section, you will see that I did something which is rather unusual. I look at the scores and I rank them from lowest to highest. The lowest score is 2. The next score is 3, and the next score is 4. So it's 2, 4, and then 3 in that sequence. But that's not the way it's supposed to be, right? That 3 has to come between the 2 and the 4. So what I do then is I draw a circle around that middle ranking number, which is 3, and I pretend that I move it over into the middle of the section so that now it's kind of in the middle. Okay, it has to be in the middle of the section. And then I draw a box around it, as you see. Okay, so now I've moved it to pretend that that ranking score is in the middle. It's in the middle of that first section. Now, if you look at the last section, you see I've had to do exactly the same thing because the middle score is not in the middle of the section. It has to be in the middle of the section. So I draw a circle around that score and I move it over to the left to the middle of the section. And I draw a box around it. And I got my little arrow there. Okay, there, that means that now I've moved both of those scores into the middle of the section. The two middle ranked scores are now in the middle of the section. Now I can draw my trend line. I connect the boxed scores, the pretend ones, right? They're hypothetical, really. Okay, I've put them in the middle of the section. Have drawn the boxes and I connect the boxes. I connect the boxes and then extend the line. Just keep on drawing that line, even though there are no scores there. That part of the line where there are no scores, but it keeps on going, that predicts where the student is going to be by the 14th week and beyond. Okay, so you don't stop at the last score that you had. You keep on doing it. Keep on drawing it as a prediction line. So what does this mean? Okay, if you look at this slide, you will see how I moved it. See, I've got that original score, I moved it to the left, and I drew a box around it. With the last three scores, I did exactly the same thing. Notice I put in there the middle number in the middle of the section. I connect the two boxed scores and keep on drawing the line. Here we see it a little bit closer. Now you see it all. Everything is there. Does the student respond to the intervention? Well, the student looks like he's definitely improving. The line is going up. It is progressing. It's better than the baseline. It's higher than the base. Okay, but did it reach the aim line? It did not reach the aim line. Is the intervention good enough? That's questionable. There are 3 points, the 3-point rule. There are 3 points underneath that trend line. Therefore, it might be wise to change the intervention a little bit so that the progress, the slope becomes steeper. The slope becomes steeper. When the slope becomes steeper, then often it requires more energy to improve. So maybe something needs to be added to the positive reinforcement that the student might be getting for reading properly, for fluency, for not talking. You look at the positive aspects, and that's what it's all about. Okay, then this means that we've talked about the aim line, we've talked about the intervention, you know about the trend line, you know that you have to Separate the first three intervention scores and the last three intervention scores. Find the middle ranking number, connect the middle ranking numbers, and extend the line. Those are the simple steps. Okay, using the graph paper, a clean white paper, and a ruler, show the aim and trend line to show if the student is progressing, maintaining achievement, or regressing. Remember to use the information of what I said and what you saw on the slides to help out. Keep things clear and quite large so that it is easy to read and I can see your numbers, I can see your lines, I can see your graph, I can see a title at the top. The due date for the graph is in one file is the 27th April 2020 at 11:30 p.m. That's next Monday night. Next Monday night. Label the bold file with your first initial, in my case would be J, and full last name, Van der Yacht in my case, and then Progmon, progress monitoring. And it's also due on Monday, so it's got both things there. At the top of the file of the single graph, word process the following: full name, special ed 358, 27 April, progress monitoring. It has to be word processed, not handwritten. No, you lose your attendance points if it's handwritten. Make sure that all the numbers are clear, axes are clearly labeled, lines are written on, aim line and trend line. Those may be handwritten, aim line and trend line, because it's kind of hard to do it with the computer. It takes a little bit of expertise. The moving of numbers using circles and squares with arrows is clearly shown if they have to be moved. Maybe they might not have to be moved. If they don't have to be moved, don't move them. If the middle ranking number is already in the middle of the section, leave it there and put a box around it. Because it is difficult to do this using the computer, you're welcome to hand draw it on paper and make a very close-up photo of the drawn graph so that all the numbers, etc., can be seen. So check it out yourself first. Then paste it onto a Microsoft Word document. Paste it on a Microsoft Word document with the headings as noted above and deposit it into the bolt box. If you wish, if it's easier for you, you may also paste it onto a PowerPoint slide. That's fine too. Okay, paste the whole thing, but make sure that I can see it very clearly and the heading and the title at the top. Okay, this is the problem. Nadia is working hard on her behavior and trying to keep her hands to herself and not touch anyone. The teacher and she have noticed that usually she has an average of 2 touches per 15 minutes. So they decide to increase the positive hands to self behavior. That's the title of the graph listed at the top of the page or PowerPoint is Hands to Self Progress. Hands to Self Progress. Now they're going to keep track of her progress, if any. Okay, the aim is to have 15 times in which she keeps her hands to herself over a period of 14 weeks. So that means that you have to know what the baseline is first. So here it is. First, they find a baseline. The baseline taken every Friday are 3, 6, and 2 for weeks 1, 2, and 3. So for weeks 1, 2, and 3, it should be B1, B2, B3, just like I've just shown you in the other one. Now, then they draw a line, a dashed line. You have to do that in between between the number 3 and 4. They look at the intervention. If she keeps her hands to herself, she gets to sharpen everyone's pencils for the day since that gives touch, yet in a productive manner, and she loves doing that. Go round and round and round and round and round. Okay, like the wheels of the bus go round and round and round. Okay, following the number of times during the intervention that she keeps her hands to herself. And the first row is the week 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way to 14. Okay, and then comes the numbers 2, 6, 5, 9, 12. Okay, all the way to 18, number of times not touching anyone. So what are you going to do? First, you have to draw the aim line. You know what the base is. You know what the goal is. The goal is 15 times in which she keeps her hands to herself over a period of 14 weeks, or on by the 14th week. By the 14th week. Okay, so your axes will go up to week 14. Then you need to draw the trend line. Okay, connect the dots for the number of weeks, for each of the weeks. Okay, then you separate the first 3 dots and the last 3 dots from the rest. Draw your vertical lines. See if the middle ranking number is in the middle of the section. If not, you have to move it there. Connect the boxes and extend the line. Does Nadia meet her goal? That's the question, and that's for you to decide and put it into the bolt box with the correct labels. Due Monday night by 11:30.